Rounding out the broadcast week, as we typically do, with our friend Yaël Ossowski for the Consumer Choice Center. Look at that. You snap your finger, you get a couple of nights rest, and you go from Wilmington, North Carolina to Vienna, Austria. Yaël traveling over the pond yesterday and on a new continent just a couple of days following his appearance in studio with us during an opportunity to guest host the program and then a chance to see the Wilmington area for the first time in a couple of years. Yaël, thanks so much for joining us here today, as you typically do on Fridays.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. It's great to be part of a routine, but I'm kind of out of my routine right now and feeling the jet lag very, very heavy. But this is the price that we pay for the Big Talker. This is what we do for the listeners. We're here every week, and we try to do this as best we can.
So with that said, give us a little insight into what life is like traveling abroad right now. You've gone successfully to the States and now back over to Europe. What is life like, in air travel these days? I know really no one who has, traveled abroad, in the midst of this pandemic. What's that life like?
Well, I'm pretty lucky, Joe. I've got multiple passports, and my wife is Austrian, and I've got a residence card here in Austria, so I am able to. Funny thing about the travel, we just go to the D.C. airport, Dulles. Anyone who's ever been there, it's a concrete monstrosity, but it was basically empty, and there were no restaurants open except Wendy's. So you could go and have your nice cheeseburger there, but all the smaller and the more local restaurants within the airport were closed. And that was only the beginning. When we saw the plane, I think full capacity is 300. I think there were about 60 people on the entire plane. So I'm pretty sure most of these airlines are not making any money right now. So don't be surprised if there's another call for bailouts here very soon. But apart from that, getting on the flight, not a problem, and because there were less crowds, security was actually great. Didn't have to take any creams out of my bag. I was allowed to go to the magnetometer. I felt like a normal person, didn't have to go through the scanner, the naked body scanner, so that felt great. But being on the flight, I tell you, Joe, it's tough having to wear the mask for 9 hours, having a toddler who's ready to storm the cockpit at any moment's notice. It's a tough gig. Somebody's got to do it, but now that we've landed, we're back in this country and had to go do our first COVID test ever. So that was a super strange sort of thing that we had to deal with.
With that said, and I'm glad that you're safe and sound and healthy, and you came to the hot spot of North Carolina, and you survived, from what we know right now, and hopefully those test results confirm that for you. But once again, it was just great to see you and meet your family, and I thought we had a great time over at Wrightsville Beach. However, we had to adjust our plans a little while because per Governor Cooper's executive order, the beer and wine store that I wanted to bring you to was not allowing people to, consume those beverages outdoors on their property because they're a beer and wine store. So we had to walk 200 feet across the parking lot to a tavern restaurant and sat outside and enjoyed a cold one and supported that local business instead. Talk about picking winners and losers. Just a real sad situation, I think, continuing to play out for some of these small businesses across the state and around the country, depending on the different policies that are in place.
And one thing I count on is just the creativity of entrepreneurs. So if this carries on, this is going to be the rest of September going into October. It's the last good swath of warm weather that many people will have. There's going to be a way that entrepreneurs are going to figure a way around this. I think any of us have been to many establishments over the years that find ways to skirt rules, but do so safely. They're going to have to come up with something. Maybe we'll all be drinking in the parking lots or something that are closed in. Maybe there'll be a delivery window that allows people to sit. There's something that's going to happen with the entrepreneurs, but man, I'm really feeling for them. It's really tough to see and to know that we don't really have much certainty. I know you've covered that on the program all week. What science are they using now? What numbers? What are the metrics? What's the benchmark? When can we know that we can open up and we can actually go and meet friends again? When can we know that we can go to our local pub? And why is it that I can go to Target and I can go to Walmart, but I can't just sit on an open patio near the beach and enjoy a beer? This is the kind of stuff that a lot of people are going to have to answer for. It might come in a couple of months, but definitely people are listening to what politicians are saying right now, and there might be a big smack come the fall if this continues.
And that's one of the things that kind of frustrates me, in that we don't know. We're not given really clear information. Just yesterday, in fact, the governor holds his first news briefing in 16 days and then says, well, we can reopen the schools, kindergarten through fifth grades, beginning next month. He did not back that up with the science and the data that he's been supposedly relying on over the last number of months. He just said, well, we know now that younger people are less likely to catch the virus, so we're going to reopen the schools. Well, over the last several months, we were talking about how, well, people who may or may not contract the virus could spread it unknowingly. So just unclear, and that's the issue that really I think many people have, is that we're not being given real clear direction one way or the other. As you said, little to no type of benchmarks. At the beginning it was, we need to flatten the curve, and we need to prevent our hospitals and healthcare workers from being overwhelmed. By and large, we did that here in North Carolina, and yet here we are 8-9 months later, and yes, we're continuing to see cases, but we were never told that this virus is just going to be eradicated. And I don't know. We can always play Monday morning quarterback. I just feel that it's the long-lasting impacts that this is going to have across a wide spectrum is going to really weigh on the American people and North Carolinians for a long time.
Yeah, and especially if you're an entrepreneur and you have to plan and you have to look at your payroll. I mean, I think you spoke to it earlier in the broadcast, Joe. You talked about how now we're going to have local decision making when it comes to the different school boards or the different superintendents who are going to make the call on schools and what happens there. And that's a great call. Why don't we afford that ability for the bars and the restaurants and the normal businesses as well? Because in New Hanover County, if you compare these numbers compared to Mecklenburg County, compared to Wake County, look, nowhere near it. So there's got to be some measure of understanding that there is more risk elsewhere. There are more cases elsewhere, and people that are responsible and businesses that are responsible should be allowed to get back out there. I mean, we beat the drum all day long. I do think people are listening, and look, we've made sacrifices. Many of us have made sacrifices. Many of you might be sitting at home and haven't been able to work for many months because you've been in the hospitality industry. I know that just being at the hotel that we stayed out there in Wilmington, Joe, was basically empty. It was like us in 2 other rooms, and that's a huge hotel. And you have to imagine all the people that they used to employ, all the people who clean, all the people who work at the restaurant or the bar there, all the people who work at the front desk. I mean, this is not just a small impact. And unfortunately, it's people like me who are able to work from home. For us, things don't change that much, but it's really for the everyday worker. That's what we're really standing up for, is the entrepreneurs, the workers, making sure that these people can make a living, and we don't have to wait on the next bailout or the next huge bill to come down from above in D.C. I think that's the only way to move forward. I know a lot of people are smart. A lot of people have already made a lot of sacrifices. I think they just need answers now.
Yaël Ossowski for the Consumer Choice Center with us, host of the Consumer Choice radio show, airs 10 o'clock Saturday mornings. Yaël, before I let you go, as you kind of get back into the swing of things, what are some of the news headlines or topics you're kind of following that you feel are of interest to some of our listeners out there?
Well, the big one is, if any of you at home have any, millennials, younger millennials, or if you got some Zoomers, some Generation Z, the big news that's coming down the pipe is that TikTok and WeChat are not going to be in the app stores anymore. That's going to be starting on Sunday. So that means that TikTok, which is, used by 50 million people in this country, perhaps even more, is not going to be in the app store anymore. And that's all because of politics. It's the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. And I don't know, this might be a strange political awakening. Have a lot of these Zoomers are not super politically savvy. They're not super involved as of yet. If they find out that all of a sudden their app is not available anymore, there could be some kind of reckoning that is to come because of this. And it is because of the complexity of this application that was built by a Chinese company that has the oversight of the Chinese Communist Party. I think Trump did some good effort in trying to make the point that there needs to be an American company that's involved with all of the data information here in the United States, so we know that that information doesn't run rampant or it is used by some kind of nefarious actor in the Chinese Communist Party. But, it's not going well right now. It seems to be a tight, tit for tat. It's not the best situation right now, specifically when you start talking about very apolitical younger people who are now waking up and their apps aren't going to be available. That's going to be a big deal. I hope the political forces out there understand how important this issue is, because it's not just about TikTok. Tomorrow it could be Facebook. Tomorrow it could be Twitter. There's a lot of political backlash against many companies right now. This one is a bit out there because you're talking about national security concerns. You're talking about the long arm of the Chinese communist regime. But it's definitely top of mind. There's definitely going to be a little bit of debate on this. Many people weighing in who don't even know what TikTok is. I've never heard of it. Others who are very, very proud and happy and willing to show you their latest dance, which is what TikTok is all about.
No doubt. I think one of the things I always get a chuckle out of is when these old white hairs up in Washington are basically guided by their staffers when they talk about tech and some of the newer industries that have surfaced from Silicon Valley, and how when they put these big CEOs under the spotlight, again, they need the millennial staffer over on the side to give them the notes and feed them the talking points, because they have no idea about much of this new emerging world that we live in.
And similar to that, you had earlier this week, this is actually on Tuesday, so right before I was in the studio there in Wilmington, you had a hearing again in the Senate Judiciary Committee on Google and advertising. And you have these U.S. senators who are up there trying to discern what's different between the online advertising tools of Google versus other companies. Do they have a monopoly? Do they not have a monopoly? And it was very much just like you described, Joe. It was the talking points that they got from their millennial staffers to talk about Google's advertising, let's say, largesse, and trying to understand how to deal with that in the market. Thankfully, there were some very pro-innovation, pro-market senators who were there making a good statement. I think Mike Lee, who's chairman of the committee, the subcommittee that was hearing that, is probably a good one. He understands that tech means innovation, and it means that these are great American businesses. I mean, where I am in Europe, we don't have a Google. We don't have a Twitter or a Facebook. It doesn't exist because the laws here, the rules, the taxes, they're just not conducive to a great innovative environment like we have in the United States. So we have to really learn to chalk up our wins. Google has been a huge win. Many small businesses rely on Google and their advertising to reach out to people who can go to their restaurant. Many people rely on them for their small businesses at home. Many people use things like Etsy to make arts and crafts to sell online. I mean, this is the new way of the economy. There's a lot of people who might not understand everything, but there's a lot of people who are, and a lot of people who've actually been able to make money, to raise their standard of living. That's very important to know. We can't really have bumbling grandpas and grandmas writing the laws on this. We really do need to power through with innovation.
Yeah, look forward to hearing from you tomorrow during the Consumer Choice Radio Show at 10 a.m. right here on the Big Talker FM. Glad you're back home safe, and I enjoyed our time together this week.
Yes, it was great. I love Wilmington. Amazing area. You guys really are one of the luckiest people in the entire country. Beautiful area. So happy to be part of Big Talker. And talk to you again soon, Joe.
Yes, next week, Yaël Ossowski joins us on Friday mornings just after 9:30 here on the Big Talker FM. We'll wrap up the program after this.